5 days before my wedding, my fiancé dumped me for his ex and a dead man's will. He thought I'd shatter quietly. Instead, I married his biggest rival, stole the spotlight. What started as revenge turned into something more. Something real. Now the truth is out, their perfect lie is crumbling and I'm the one rewriting the ending. The day my world crumbled started like any other. Coffee at 7. Emails by 7:30. I stepped into the office at 9 a.m. in a crisp white blazer, 5 days out from my wedding. My dress fitting was scheduled for 2 p.m. My fiancé Logan Pierce had promised to take me to lunch. Just the two of us, he'd said, placing a hand on my knee the night before. Before it all begins. He forgot to mention that by it, he meant my public execution. At 1:04 p.m. I got a text. Logan, we need to talk. Meet me at the old gallery. Now. I didn't ask why. I didn't respond. I simply closed my laptop, grabbed my purse and walked out of the office like I wasn't about to have my life flipped upside down. The gallery was empty when I arrived, shadows spilling through the dusty skylights and footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. This was where Logan first kissed me. Where he proposed under a ceiling of glass stars. Where he promised me forever. Now he stood in front of the broken frame of our old photo, hands in his pockets. Is it about the wedding? I asked. He turned around. And smiled. Not nervously. Not apologetically. Smugly. I'm calling it off, he said. Just like that. My heart didn't break. It paused. Like a glitch in the system. My brain, however, surged with every word he didn't say. I'm sorry. I hate that this is happening. I wish things were different. He didn't offer any of those. Instead he said, Savannah came back. Savannah Blake. The childhood sweetheart. The ghost from Logan's past. She had disappeared 5 years ago without so much as a postcard. I still remembered the first time he cried over her. I'd brought him tissues and cocoa. I'd listened to every story about her emerald green eyes and old soul. And eventually I helped him heal. Or so I thought. She needs me, he said. Her father passed. His will, it asked me to take care of her. Marry her. I blinked. You're marrying me next Saturday. I know, he said. But this is bigger than us, Tessa. My lips twitched. Let me see if I have this right. A ghost reappears with a sob story, a will clause, and the perfect excuse to blow up your fiancé's life, and you just go along with it. He shifted. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. That was when I knew. He wasn't breaking my heart. He was flipping a chessboard, convinced the pieces would never strike back. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I'll call the vendors. I'm sure they'll appreciate 6 days' notice. He looked relieved. But one thing, Logan. What? I looked him dead in the eyes. I'm still walking down that aisle. His brow furrowed. What are you talking about? You'll see. I didn't cry. I drove home, took a long bath and poured myself a glass of wine while the dress shop left 3 frantic voicemails about postponing the fitting. Then I called my brother. Eli. I said when he picked up. There was a pause. Then, who do I need to kill? I laughed for the first time in hours. No murders today. But I need a favor. Eli Grant wasn't just my older brother. He was a former military strategist turned political fixer. The man could dismantle a smear campaign faster than most people could cook dinner. Tell me, he said. I need a groom. Dead silence. Then he exhaled. Tessa. Before Saturday. Are you drunk? Nope. Not even a little. You want to marry someone else, in 6 days? I don't want a marriage. I want an alliance. He cursed under his breath. Give me a few hours. By morning Eli had a name. Beckett Ward. Tech tycoon. Billionaire investor. Stone-cold businessman with a resume of ruin. He was the kind of man the media couldn't decide whether to worship or fear. He also happened to be Logan's #1 competitor for a biotech acquisition. Perfect. I'll arrange the meeting, Eli said. But be careful. Beckett doesn't do favors. I met Beckett in a private lounge overlooking Central Park. He arrived in a slate gray suit with no tie, sleeves rolled to his forearms, and a watch that probably cost more than my first car. He didn't shake hands. He sat across from me, folded his arms and waited. You know who I am, he said. Yes. You know what I do. Yes. Then tell me why you're here. I smiled. Because Logan Pierce discarded me like a press release gone stale, and I want to destroy him, gracefully. Beckett's brow lifted slightly. And where do I fit into this demolition fantasy? You become the replacement. He stared at me. I held his gaze. You get public sympathy, image rehab, and control of the media narrative. I get to walk down the aisle. We call it off in 6 months, cite irreconcilable differences, and walk away richer than we started. His eyes narrowed. You came prepared. I leaned in. You haven't seen anything yet. 3 hours later we had a contract. 6-month marriage term. Public appearances as required. Shared PR and brand collateral. No romantic obligation. No disclosure to the press until the ceremony. Beckett stood to gain significant leverage in the biotech deal, especially if Logan looked unstable. And I would finally get the last word. We shook hands. And in that moment something shifted. He didn't see me as broken. He saw me as dangerous. The next 48 hours were a blur. A new dress. A new venue. A new narrative. Eli mobilized a team to leak select details. Tessa Hart seen with mysterious man at 4 Seasons. Beckett Ward confirms personal development. Logan's PR team scrambled. Savannah's face was plastered across gossip sites in soft focus engagement photos. Meanwhile, I was busy picking out my new ring. Beckett sent 3 options. I chose the one that matched my nail polish. Blood red. The night before the wedding, Logan called me. I stared at the screen. Did I want to answer? Yes. I picked up. Tessa, he said. I saw the news. You're marrying Beckett Ward? Yes. You don't even know him. I smiled. Neither did Savannah last week. You're making a mistake. No, Logan. I'm correcting one. I didn't sleep. Not because I was nervous, but because I was exhilarated. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. I'd been turned into a footnote in my own story. Now I was writing a new headline. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of a mirror wearing a gown the color of storms. Silver-gray silk with a plunging back and cuffs studded with onyx. Beckett waited downstairs. Eli stood by the door checking his watch. You ready? He asked. I nodded. One last thing, Eli said. You sure about him? No, I replied honestly. But I'm sure about me. Outside, the press gathered like vultures dressed in Prada. They expected a fashion show. They got a battlefield. As Beckett and I stood on the steps of St. Augustine Hall, cameras flashed, people gasped, and somewhere across the city, Logan Pierce watched his replacement walk down the aisle in designer heels. My heels. Beckett leaned in as the minister began the vows. You look terrifying, he murmured. I smiled. Good. The first time I met Beckett Ward, he humiliated me in front of 200 venture capitalists. It was a business pitch. My first major one. I was young, underdressed, and determined. I'd created a fashion tech prototype that monitored stress levels in high-performance wear. Beckett was on the panel. I made it 5 slides in before he leaned into his mic and said, You're either incredibly brave or profoundly naive. That quote later made it into 2 industry magazines. He didn't laugh when he said it. Didn't smirk either. He just stared at me like I was already drowning and he was bored by the splashing. Now I was marrying him. Life's poetic like that. We met at the venue just after sunrise, an old private library in Midtown that Beckett's grandfather once owned. The ceremony was to be intimate, swift, watertight. The legal team had signed off on the marriage contract the night before. We were already bound by ink. Now it was time to make it public. Eli stood off to the side, arms crossed, pretending he wasn't mildly panicking. He'd handled dozens of political black ops in his life, but watching his little sister marry New York's coldest billionaire with 24 hours notice apparently made him sweat. You know you don't have to go through with this, right? He muttered one last time. I know, I said, adjusting my cuff. Beckett entered behind me, all hard edges and matte black silk. He didn't glance at me. Just walked straight to the altar, stood still and waited. Always composed. Always in control. Until I looked him in the eye. Mr. Ward, I said softly, ready to make a few headlines? He arched a brow. Lead the way, Mrs. Ward. The officiant was already briefed, paid handsomely for silence and swiftness. There were no flower girls. No bridesmaids. Just a vow, a contract, and a kiss that was more branding than romance. Beckett said his lines without flinching. When it was my turn, I recited mine like I was negotiating a merger. I do. There was no music. No applause. Just the soft click of a camera from Beckett's PR director. A single photo. Just one. That was all we needed. Across the city, Savannah and Logan were posing for their own photographers in a waterfront estate in the Hamptons. White roses, crystal chandeliers, a guest list of 300. Press embargoes in place until their post-ceremony PR blast. They were expecting a 6-page spread in Vow and Vogue. What they got instead was me. At exactly 11:27 a.m., Beckett's team released the image. No captions. No names. Just one stunning black-and-white photo of the two of us, standing under stained glass, my hand resting lightly on his chest, our wedding bands unmistakable. The internet lost its mind. Breaking. Beckett Ward married in private ceremony. Mystery bride revealed to be ex of Logan Pierce? Logan who? Tessa Hart reappears in Couture and Vengeance. The wedding that replaced a wedding. What is happening in New York's elite circles? Hashtag Tessa Hart trended globally by noon. Savannah's wedding hashtag Logan and Savannah 2025, had barely cracked the top 100. I sat with Beckett in the back of his town car as our phones vibrated non-stop. His fingers were steepled, unreadable as ever. I glanced out the window. He's going to be furious. Beckett didn't look up. Let him be. Do you think he'll call? Eventually. Arrogant men always want their toys back after someone else plays with them. I smiled faintly. You're not a toy player. No, he said, finally glancing at me. I'm a collector. Savannah called first. Blocked number. Straight to voicemail. Then came her assistant, pretending it was a scheduling mix-up. Then her stylist, asking if my new wardrobe had been custom-tailored. By 2 p.m. even Logan's mother had texted. If this is your idea of closure, Tessa, it's in poor taste. I sent back a single line. No, Karen. This is my idea of justice. Back at Beckett's penthouse, we met with a legal team to finalize the NDA terms. The marriage was legally binding, but so was the prenup. In 6 months, either party could file for an annulment or quiet divorce. No damage, no exposure. Unless someone broke the rules. I don't plan on breaking anything, I said, signing my copy. Beckett signed his with a single stroke. Not yet, anyway. That night, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and stepped out onto the terrace. The city stretched below, buzzing, blind, brilliant. The chaos was just beginning. Beckett joined me, 2 fingers of scotch in his hand. Why me? He asked suddenly. I looked at him. Why not just vanish, change your number, hide away like every other disgraced socialite? I smiled. I wasn't disgraced. I was dismissed. And you wanted to correct that? No, I said. I wanted them to choke on the idea that I didn't need to crawl to recover. He studied me. You know, he said after a moment, I thought you were weak the first time I saw you. I was. He tilted his head. You're not anymore. No. Pause. Good, he said quietly. Meanwhile, the Pierce wedding was melting into a PR nightmare. Half the guests had their phones out mid-ceremony. The murmurs started before Logan even kissed the bride. By the time they cut the cake, the headlines had buried them. New bride, new power. Is Beckett Ward poised to steal Cooper deal? Savannah who? Meet the woman who upstaged New York's golden couple. Savannah's bouquet photos were being reposted with sarcastic captions. Logan's vows were mocked in stitched reaction videos. The highlight of their $800,000 wedding? My ring. Back at the penthouse, I watched a late-night news segment play the photo again. Beckett Ward and Tessa Hart. The 2 names the Coopers never saw coming. My phone lit up with a message from Logan. You've made your point. Can we talk? I didn't respond. He sent another. You didn't love him. You used him. And finally, if you wanted to hurt me, congratulations. I stared at the screen, then typed a reply. Oh Logan. This isn't even the beginning. By Monday morning, the city hadn't stopped talking. I was no longer a jilted bride. I was a woman reborn, in the arms of Beckett Ward no less. But public buzz fades fast without fuel. Logan and Savannah still had time to recover, unless I made sure they didn't. So I gave the fire oxygen. Drop it Wednesday, I told Beckett's PR director Charlotte as I stood in his private office, dressed in a slate gray pantsuit and heels tall enough to make even my regrets feel small. Morning cycle. Exclusive to Lace and Ledger. Charlotte blinked. The lifestyle mag? They've been begging for a tech exclusive for months, I said. Let them break the story. Fashion forward. Female-led. Human angle. Charlotte scribbled a note. And the product? Rebranded, I replied. We're calling it Hartria. Beckett's voice cut in from behind. After your mother? I turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, sleeves rolled, no tie again, like he refused to look traditional even in billion-dollar boardrooms. I nodded once. She started sewing out of our garage. Always wanted to see her name on something elegant. He crossed the room without hesitation and handed me a file. Here, he said. Legal sign-off. You own 49% of the brand. I keep 49. The other 2% goes to your choice of a women's development fund. I raised a brow. Why only 49? His jaw ticked faintly. Because if either of us turns hostile, the brand dies. And I don't build things to die. For a moment we just stared at each other. Not as enemies. Not yet as allies. Something between. All right, I said, signing. Hartria was born. A fashion tech hybrid company that would blend wearable tech with aesthetic couture. Smart fabrics. Stress sensors. AI-integrated fashion meant for high-performance women in high-pressure roles. It wasn't just revenge. It was mine. The soft launch was scheduled exactly 4 days after Logan's wedding. Planned? Absolutely. The morning of the reveal, Logan tried again. Logan, you're trending. You've made your move. Now can we talk? Logan, this thing with Beckett, are you really going to drag this out for press? I didn't respond. Instead, I posted a video teaser. Just 14 seconds. Me walking through a sleek digital studio. A backless black dress lit with pulsing sapphire light. Not a comeback. A recalibration. No voice. No names. Just a sharp tagline and a silent smirk. It took 30 minutes to hit 500,000 views. At the same time, Savannah was imploding quietly behind closed doors. Beckett's analysts had flagged something interesting. Her family's estate was under tax investigation, and the board of Pierce MedTech was quietly distancing itself from her father's old charity. Pressure was mounting. And I hadn't even touched her yet. By Thursday, Lace and Ledger dropped the full spread. Power, precision, and a phoenix in pumps. Inside Tessa Hart's next act. Photos of me in their studio wearing prototypes. Interviews curated to emphasize not pity but purpose. The quote that went viral. You can't replace me with a ghost and expect silence. I'm not disposable. I'm scalable. That afternoon, Beckett and I hosted a private cocktail reveal at an art gallery in Tribeca. 50 hand-picked journalists. 0 invites for legacy media loyal to Logan or Savannah. Beckett stood beside me in all black. No tie again. His statement look. I wore deep navy silk. Hair slicked. Earrings like tiny blades. When the cameras clicked, I didn't flinch. When the questions came, I smiled and answered. What inspired Hartria? My mother's sewing machine and my ex-fiance's short memory. Beckett didn't even blink. When a tabloid Times reporter asked, so the marriage, is it personal or a power move? I looked Beckett dead in the eye. He said nothing. I turned back and replied, yes. Backstage after the event, Beckett handed me a glass of something gold and cold. You handled them like a machine. I'm not a machine. No, he said. Machines don't make people uncomfortable. I sipped. Uncomfortable is where power lives. He smirked slightly, then glanced down at his phone. Logan tried to contact my office again. His legal team sent a cease and desist, claimed we used his research framework in Hartria. I tilted my head. We didn't. I know, Beckett said. But they're flailing. I nodded. Good. Want me to bury them? No, I replied. Let them panic a little longer. I want Savannah to sweat before I pull the thread. He turned to me fully, then his expression unreadable. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? He paused. A woman who wanted comfort. I scoffed. Comfort is for the healed. He said nothing more, but didn't look away for a long moment. The next day Savannah made her move. Sort of. She posted a curated thank you video on Instagram. Soft music, floral arch, her hand on Logan's chest while he stared vacantly into the camera. Feeling grateful. Feeling loved. Hashtag blessed bride. The comment section was brutal. You mean hashtag rebound bride? How's it feel to get married and still lose? Tessa won without even trying. Yikes. Logan disabled his own account 2 hours later. Savannah texted me at midnight. Savannah, you always needed the spotlight. I pity you. I responded. You should. You gave it to me. By Saturday I was in Beckett's office, signing distribution contracts and reviewing the next PR cycle when Charlotte barged in, visibly flustered. Sir, Miss Hart, you'll want to see this. She placed a tablet on the table. On the screen, leaked photos of Savannah crying outside a lawyer's office. Her makeup smudged. Her shoes in hand. Logan beside her, jaw clenched. Beckett looked at me. I leaned back in my chair. She's spiraling, I said softly. He nodded. You planned this well. No, I said. They planned their own downfall. I just set the camera angle. He paused. Then after a beat, you should have been a strategist. I smiled faintly. I am one. And for the first time he didn't correct me. That evening we hosted a private investor dinner at Beckett's penthouse. A few billionaires. A few high-end editors. Some faces I hadn't seen since Logan's engagement party, where I stood beside him and listened to his father toast the future Mrs. Pierce. I wasn't that woman anymore. I was something else entirely. Savvier. Sharper. Scarred, yes, but not broken. I caught Beckett watching me once during the dinner. Not in the way Logan used to, like I was decoration or PR candy. This was something different. Measuring. Matching. I lifted my champagne glass. He lifted his. We toasted without a word. That night as I got ready for bed in the guest suite of Beckett's penthouse, I passed by my own reflection. I didn't see heartbreak. I saw strategy. And as I pulled the covers over me, my phone buzzed once more. Logan, you've made your point. Please stop. I stared at the screen, then turned it off. Because this wasn't even close to the end. The Metropolis Gala was an annual event meant to raise money for modern art education. It wasn't supposed to be a battlefield. But when I saw Savannah Blake's name on the guest list, I knew exactly what kind of night it would be. She RSVP'd yesterday, Charlotte murmured as she adjusted the clasp on my diamond cuff. I didn't look away from the mirror. Does she know I'll be there? Charlotte paused. The list was made public 2 days ago. I nodded. Of course. She's coming for a scene, Beckett said from the door. I glanced at him through the mirror. His tie was undone, his shirt collar crisp and slightly open, effortless power in black and midnight gray. She thinks I'll break, I replied. Beckett stepped closer, eyes narrowing slightly. Will you? I met his reflection and smiled. No. But she might. The gala was held in the Grand Astrid Museum, a gilded fortress of glass staircases and overhanging crystal chandeliers. Beckett and I entered side by side, flanked by photographers. The flashbulbs popped like fireworks. Tessa. Over here. Is it true you're launching your own tech label? Beckett, are you investing or in love? I kept my smile precise. Cool. Not cold. Beckett leaned down as we stepped onto the red carpet. Don't answer anything. Let them wonder. I plan to. Inside, the crowd parted like an obedient tide. Designers, CEOs, actors, tech visionaries. Everyone watched us. Most smiled too brightly. Some whispered when they thought we couldn't hear. I didn't care. Because tonight I was no one's victim. And they all knew it. We'd been in the gallery for 15 minutes when she arrived. Savannah Blake. In white. Of course. Strapless, sequined, clinging to her frame like a glittered apology. Her hair was curled, her lipstick blood red. Logan wasn't with her. Which meant this was intentional. A solo appearance. A statement. I turned casually, glass in hand, just as she spotted me across the room. Her eyes narrowed. And then, smile loaded, she crossed the floor like a model on a mission. Here we go. Tessa. Savannah sang, her voice lilting like a musical theater audition. Oh my God, it's been ages. I took a slow sip of my champagne. Not long enough, Savannah. She leaned in, air kissing the side of my cheek. The cameras nearby subtly angled toward us. Beckett remained beside me, statuesque and unreadable. Savannah's eyes flicked to him, then back to me. Wow, she said, pressing a hand to her chest. You've really upgraded. From boardroom to billionaire. Tell me, how does one go from dump to dominant in just a week? I didn't flinch. Easy, I said with a soft smile. I wasn't the one left chasing ghosts. That got her. Her jaw twitched before she recovered. I heard your company launch is doing well. Really brave of you to try again. I always admired your ambition even when it outpaced your talent. I tilted my head. And I admired your ability to return from the dead so conveniently. Logan must be thrilled to have his obedience collar back. A beat of stunned silence. Then, click click click. Cameras snapped as Savannah's expression twisted just for a second too long. Beckett took a measured sip of his drink beside me, his body subtly angled forward like a sentry. Still so sharp, Tessa, Savannah said, her voice cracking slightly. But you know what they say, wounds that aren't healed turn into weapons. I met her eyes, lowering my voice just enough for the reporters to lean in. Then let's both be careful where we bleed. The room fell into a hush. A second later the whispers began. And Savannah? She walked away. Fast. Back in the car, silence stretched between Beckett and me as the driver pulled away from the gala. You didn't have to do that, he said finally. I did. You could have ignored her. I don't let liars speak without cost. Beckett didn't argue. He watched me instead. Finally he said, you didn't enjoy that. I said nothing. Because he was right. I hadn't. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving. There was no thrill in humiliating someone who had once humiliated me. Only relief. And exhaustion. Back at the penthouse I stepped out of my heels and walked barefoot across the marble. Beckett trailed behind me silently. His jacket was off, sleeves still rolled, jaw clenched like he'd swallowed something bitter. I'm not your project, I said as I set my clutch down. He blinked. I didn't say you were. You're watching me like I'm going to break. Like I'm a wind-up toy spinning too fast. I'm watching you, he said evenly, because you're clearly doing this alone. I turned. He stepped forward, voice lower now. You're brilliant, Tessa. But you're bleeding out in 6-inch heels. I inhaled sharply. But before I could retort he added, you don't have to prove anything to me. I exhaled. Fully. Good, I said. Because I'm not here to impress you. He nodded once. Understood. He turned to leave the room. But before he crossed the threshold he paused. I don't protect people, he said over his shoulder. Not usually. I looked at him. But tonight, he continued, when she leaned toward you I almost did. Then he was gone. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time after that. Savannah's words echoed in my head, brittle and cruel. Beckett's? Quieter. Sharper. I didn't know what unnerved me more. That I didn't hate his protectiveness. Or that I wanted it to last. The next morning the headlines were relentless. Ice Queen versus Ghost Bride. Tessa Hart silences Savannah Blake with 7 words. Metropolis Gala turns into verbal duel. Tessa wins again. Savannah Blake left speechless after harsh confrontation. Savannah's camp released a generic statement about emotional misunderstandings and unfortunate misrepresentation. No one bought it. Logan once again stayed silent. But my assistant, Amelia, forwarded a video clip that was quickly going viral. A 4-second shot. Savannah's stunned face, my ice-cold reply. The top comment. I want Tessa Hart to represent me in every argument for the rest of my life. Later that day Beckett and I were reviewing a Q4 investor brief when he said without looking up. Lunch. Tomorrow. Just us. I glanced at him. Business or PR? He finally looked at me. Neither. I didn't answer. But I didn't say no. Logan's silence hadn't lasted long. Less than 72 hours after Savannah's failed ambush at the Metropolis Gala, the media got what it had been salivating for. His voice. A smug, polished appearance on a tech podcast with a host too eager to land a headline. I mean, you have to ask yourself, Logan chuckled when prompted about Tessa and Beckett's marriage. 2 people who've barely met? A billionaire and his ex's ex-fiancée? Come on. It doesn't take a genius to smell a PR stunt. The host laughed, of course. They always do when they want to be invited back. But Logan wasn't done. Look, I wish her the best. But if this whole marriage thing is real, then I'm an astronaut. The clip went viral within minutes. Not because of what Logan said, but because of who posted it. Savannah. On her story. With a smug emoji. A few hours later, someone from their wedding party anonymously leaked to New York Insider that Tessa had begged Logan to reconsider before the wedding and was devastated when he left her for Savannah. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. But Beckett? Beckett was livid. We were in the middle of reviewing the first Hartria production samples when Charlotte rushed in with her phone, her mouth set in a hard line. "Boss, you need to see this." Beckett took one glance, muttered a curse under his breath and turned to me. "Walk with me," he said sharply. 5 minutes later we stepped out of the penthouse elevator and onto the street. The Paps were already there. Half a dozen cameras, some reporters I recognized, all desperate for a photo that could ignite the next firestorm. This time I was ready. What I wasn't ready for. Beckett stepping close. Closer than usual. His arm slipped around my waist. His hand rested low on my back. "Smile," he whispered near my ear. "We're giving them proof." And then he kissed me. Slow. Deliberate. Nothing gentle about it. Nothing forced either. Just bold. Final. The flashes exploded around us. I didn't pull away. Not because of the contract. Not because it would help us. But because I didn't want to. That afternoon, Beckett released a statement to the Ledger. "My marriage to Tessa Hart is not for publicity. It's not for profit. It's not for vengeance. It's the realest thing in the room. Full stop." The quote ran with a picture from the kiss. It was everything Logan never expected. And everything Savannah hated. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Beckett's office got flooded with interview requests. Charlotte filtered the worst ones. But one name got through. Logan. He called twice. Texted once. "Logan, what are you doing?" "Seriously, Tessa. This isn't you." "Logan, he's using you." "Logan, talk to me." I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I forwarded the screenshots to Eli. "Keep a record," I wrote. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji and, "You want surveillance on him yet?" I almost said yes. But I didn't want to watch Logan crumble. I wanted him to watch me rise. Later that night, Beckett poured 2 glasses of bourbon and handed me one as we stood in the corner of his penthouse, the skyline flickering behind us. "You didn't ask me to make that statement," he said. I took the glass. "No. But you let me." I sipped. "Yes." "Why?" "Because it was the right move." He studied me over the rim of his glass. "And because it felt good?" I didn't answer. But he smirked anyway. Savannah posted another photo the next day, Logan holding her waist tightly at a brunch spot, both of them smiling. Caption read, "Real love needs no performance." The internet chewed it alive. That's rich coming from the second-choice bride. Sis, you married a man who threw his fiancée under a bus for you. No one believes you anymore. Get therapy and Wi-Fi. Savannah's likes dropped. Her comments turned vicious. And Logan? He began calling again. Twice a day. Leaving voicemails. On Friday, Charlotte walked into my office holding a thick envelope. "What's that?" I asked. "A gift. From Savannah." I raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" Inside was an invitation. An embossed, perfumed, gilded envelope. "The Blakes and Pierces request the honor of your presence. A second wedding celebration. An official post-ceremony party. He wanted me to see her win." Beckett walked in just as I was holding the invite over the shredder. His brow lifted. "Don't." "Why not?" "Because you're going." I narrowed my eyes. "You want me to walk into a den of narcissists?" "I want you to walk in like you own the place," he said. "In a dress that makes every camera forget Savannah even exists." I stared at him. And then I smiled. The night of the party I wore liquid gold. Not sequins. Not glitter. Just silk so smooth it looked like melted sunlight. Beckett arrived to pick me up in a black McLaren, wearing a deep charcoal suit that made his eyes seem even colder. When we stepped out in front of the Blake estate, every camera turned like a wave. The couple they thought was fake now looked more real than the ones inside. Logan saw me first. His eyes widened just enough. Savannah saw me second. Her entire face tensed. We didn't speak. Not right away. Instead, Beckett and I did a circuit greeting key people, journalists, old business contacts. I even said hello to Logan's mother. Karen nearly choked on her champagne. Then, as I expected, Logan approached. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice low, forced smile on. Beckett stepped forward, but I placed a hand lightly on his wrist. "I've got this," I said. Logan led me to a quiet side room. The door shut behind us. "You're serious about him?" Logan asked immediately. I said nothing. "You really married Beckett Ward? For what? Money? Power?" "You're projecting," I said coolly. "And frankly, I'm tired of it." His expression hardened. "You didn't have to do all this. You could have walked away. And let you rewrite the ending?" He flinched. "You wanted a clean narrative," I continued. "The noble man choosing love. The tragic ex left behind. But that's not what happened. Tessa. You replaced me without a thought," I said. "But I replaced you with precision." He didn't speak. "I'm not here to get you back," I added. "I'm here to make sure you never forget what you lost." And then I walked away. Back to Beckett. Where I belonged. Where he waited. Outside, Savannah watched us from the top of the garden stairs. Beckett offered me his arm. I took it. We descended together as the string quartet started playing a piece I recognized from my original wedding planner. Beckett leaned in. "Next time he calls," he said under his breath, "I'll answer." It started with a single phrase from my assistant, Amelia. "You might want to sit down." I didn't. I stood in the middle of my office. Hartria's downtown headquarters, floor-to-ceiling windows casting Manhattan's afternoon sun across the desk, and waited. Amelia placed a manila folder down in front of me like it was a bomb. And in a way it was. "I dug deeper into the Blake estate paperwork," she said. "You told me to see if anything looked off with the will. I had. A quiet request 2 weeks earlier. No." She was handing me the spark to burn it all down. The moment I opened the folder, my stomach flipped. Inside were copies of property filings, notarized affidavits, and, most damning of all, a forgery report from a private handwriting analyst. I read the summary aloud. The codicil clause, "Logan Pierce shall wed my daughter Savannah as a condition of full inheritance," was never part of the original will. It was added months later. And it was not written by Thomas Blake. My hand tightened around the page. "And the notary?" "Dead," Amelia said grimly. "Car crash. 6 months ago." "How convenient." Beckett stood across the room, silent, arms folded. He hadn't spoken since Amelia walked in. Now he broke the silence. "This is federal," he said. "I know. If you go public, they'll be ruined," I finished. "No," his voice sharpened. "They'll be prosecuted." I sat slowly, mind spinning. Savannah had faked the one thing that justified Logan's betrayal. There had never been a final request from her father. No dying wish. No honor to uphold. She'd manufactured a narrative. Sold it like truth. And Logan, arrogant, image-obsessed Logan, had eaten it up. Worse, he'd used it as a weapon against me. He'd looked me in the eye and said, "It's not about love, it's about duty." And I had believed for a moment that maybe he was a fool in a trap. But now I knew better. "You want to release it," Beckett said evenly. It wasn't a question. I stared down at the damning pages. "I want them to answer for what they did." Beckett stepped closer. "But what's the cost to you?" I looked up. "You've already won the public war," he continued. "Your name's cleared. Your company's thriving. Logan's a punchline. Savannah's a scandal magnet. Do you really want this to end with courtrooms?" My jaw clenched. "I want the truth out. But do you want justice or revenge?" I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure. We were silent for a long time. Then Beckett spoke again, softer this time. "Tessa, once it's out, there's no undoing it." He was right. If I exposed Savannah and Logan's fraud, they wouldn't just fall from grace. They'd drown in lawsuits, asset freezes, maybe prison. And as much as I wanted them to suffer, a part of me, the part that had once loved Logan, that had known Savannah before she'd become a parasite, hesitated. I took the file and left. I walked the streets for an hour. No bodyguards. No makeup. Just me and a storm in my chest. By the time I got home, I had made my decision. But fate didn't wait. It struck first. The package was waiting for me at the penthouse. No name. Just a slim envelope on thick black paper. Inside, photos. Dozens. All taken with a telephoto lens. All of me. Me and Beckett. Me and Amelia. Me entering a lawyer's office. Me sipping coffee at my desk. Me kissing Beckett after the gala. The last photo? Me standing alone in the Hartria design room, crying. A sticky note attached. This isn't over. Walk away or we escalate. I stared at the note. Then I picked up my phone. Amelia, I said. Leak it. We hit send at 7:03 the next morning. Within an hour, 5 major outlets had the scoop. Exclusive. Savannah Blake forged father's will to secure inheritance. Legal team calls it a calculated fraud. Sources confirm, no dying wish. Logan Pierce trapped in a lie. Power couple or Ponzi scheme. Pierce and Blake empire under federal review. The headlines were just the beginning. By 10:30 a.m., the Department of Justice had opened a preliminary inquiry. At noon, Pierce Medtech's stock dropped 14%. By 3 p.m., Savannah had deleted every social media profile. And Logan? He finally called. Beckett was with me when my phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Are you going to answer? I stared at it. Let it ring. And then finally I pressed accept. Hello. His voice was raw. Tessa, why? I said nothing. You've destroyed us. No, I said. You did that the moment you believed a lie over a life we built together. He exhaled hard. You don't understand. She told me. I don't care. She's scared, Tessa. We're both scared. Good. You'll ruin everything. I smiled coldly. I hope I do. Then I hung up. Beckett handed me a glass of champagne that night. To the truth, he said. I raised my glass. To the beginning of the end. We clinked. He didn't take his eyes off me. You hesitated, he said. I nodded. But then they reminded me who they are. And who are you now? I met his gaze. No one's replacement. They didn't go down quietly. After the exposé detonated across every major outlet, I gave Logan and Savannah 72 hours of silence. It was a courtesy. They answered it with war. It started with a letter. Delivered by courier. Thin. Polished. Ew. Inside was a lawsuit filed against Hartria Incorporated for intellectual property theft, alleging that we had stolen proprietary stress response algorithms from Pierce Medtech's archives. Never mind that I'd designed the tech years before I ever met Logan. Never mind that we'd already patented it under my mother's name. Never mind that Beckett had lawyers on retainer who'd burned bigger companies for breakfast. This wasn't about truth. It was about smear. A desperate, scorched-earth tactic to turn public opinion before the DOJ could issue subpoenas. What's their angle? I asked, pacing Beckett's office as his lead counsel combed through the documents. They want a gag order, she said. If they can cast doubt on Hartria's ethics, they can argue that your exposé was part of a defamation campaign to weaken their public offering. I stopped walking. They're trying to discredit me so the fraud claim loses weight. Exactly. Beckett stood by the window, his expression unreadable. Then he turned. I'll take the hit. My eyes snapped to him. What? He held up the complaint. They're targeting you because you're the face. If I release a statement saying the algorithm was independently acquired through my firm, that I pushed it into Hartria, they'll pivot. And you'll become the villain. He shrugged. I've played worse roles. I stared at him. This could hurt your entire portfolio, I said. I don't care. You should. Beckett walked over and set the folder down. They won't touch you. Not while I can bleed for you first. The room went quiet. No cameras. No contracts. No strategy. Just us. Just a man willing to take the fall for something I built with my own 2 hands. And still, I didn't stop him. Because I was tired. And because I wanted to know what it felt like to be protected without needing to earn it. The press pounced. Beckett's statement dropped that night. He took full ownership of the disputed algorithm. Public reactions split in 2. Some called him arrogant. Others called him loyal. But the most repeated headline? Billionaire Beckett Ward takes bullet for bride. For once, Logan wasn't in the spotlight. And it killed him. 2 days later, Savannah showed up. In person. At my office. Amelia tried to stop her at reception, but Savannah slipped past security in a trench coat and sunglasses, walked straight into the executive wing, and threw open my office door like she owned the building. She didn't even knock. "You happy now?" she spat, slamming the door shut behind her. I rose from my chair slowly. "Get out." "No," she hissed. "Not until you hear me. I've already heard enough lies for 1 year, Savannah. You ruined us." "No," I said, stepping closer. "You ruined yourselves." I just held up the mirror. "You think you're powerful now, huh?" she snapped. "Just because you married money and wore a few sharp dresses?" "I think I'm powerful," I said coolly, "because you're shaking." Her hand twitched at her side. Savannah's palm cracked across my cheek, loud in the silence of my office. My face whipped to the side. The sting bloomed instantly. But I didn't flinch. I straightened slowly, turned to look her dead in the eyes, and let a calm, razor-edged smile stretch across my face. "That was your last move, Savannah. And it was just as pathetic as your fake little fairy tale." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "I hope, no, I pray, that this is the last time I ever see your face. Because if life ever brings you near me again, it'll be to watch me win." I stepped closer, voice dropping. "Goodbye, Savannah. You're finished. And this time there's no one left to save you." Then I opened the door. "Get out." And she did. She didn't say another word. Because she knew. It was over. Beckett was waiting outside the building before I even called him. He opened the passenger door himself. "Get in." I did. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't have to. My cheek said everything. That he made one call. "Get the house ready. We're going off-grid." The estate was 3 hours outside the city. Hidden between hills and trees and long gravel roads no GPS could track. Beckett's sanctuary. The kind of place billionaires escape to when the world tried to take a bite. The moment I stepped inside, I felt the pressure peel away from my shoulders. No phones. No media. No threats. Just silence. And him. "I'm sorry," I said quietly once we were alone in the living room. "For what?" "You took a hit for me." "I told you," he said, pouring a glass of scotch. "I don't protect people. You protect me." He looked at me, then handed me the glass. "I do." Later, after the fire was lit and dinner cleared, I stood barefoot on the back patio in one of Beckett's oversized shirts, watching the wind move through the pines. He joined me without a word. No suits. No armor. Just Beckett. "Did she scare you?" he asked softly. I didn't answer right away. "Not her," I said finally. "The part of me that almost became her." He looked at me. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm just like them," I whispered. "If I've let this war make me cold. Hollow." He stepped closer. "You're not hollow, Tessa." "How do you know?" "Because I've been," he said. "And I know what it looks like." That night I didn't sleep in the guest wing. I didn't think. I just knocked once on his door and stood there in the dark. He opened it. He didn't ask why. Just moved aside and let me in. No lines were crossed. No clothes removed. But I slept beside him, head on his chest, breath syncing with his. For the first time in months I woke up without fear. Without rage. Just calm. I woke to the sound of birds and the smell of cedar. And Beckett's steady breathing beside me. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. Not this soft. Not this safe. Not in the arms of a man I once considered a calculated partnership. But the longer I lay there, my hand resting lightly against his chest, his heartbeat real and unguarded, the harder it became to deny what was shifting between us. This was no longer just business. This wasn't just revenge. And maybe that was the scariest part. We spent the morning in silence. Comfortable, not cold. Coffee on the wraparound porch. Bare feet on slate tile. No phones. No lawyers. No war rooms. Beckett made eggs. I raised an eyebrow. "You cook." He glanced over his shoulder. "I wasn't always a billionaire." "You were born with that jawline, though." He smirked. And for once the smirk didn't feel like a mask. Felt like an invitation. By noon we were walking the wooded path behind the estate, wrapped in jackets and the kind of quiet that didn't need filling. "I was 22 when I made my first million," he said suddenly. I looked at him. "And?" "I lost it 6 months later." That made me stop. He kept walking. "It was a scam," he said. "A pitch that looked brilliant, felt urgent, smelled expensive. I put in everything. Got cleaned out." He paused at a break in the trees. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not my partner. I just started over. And now you're here, I said. He turned to face me. Tao, I'm here. There was something in his eyes. Not regret. Not pride. Something raw. And for the first time since this began, I saw the man. Not the investor, not the shield, but the man behind it all. That night we sat curled on the couch in front of the fire, an old vinyl playing softly in the background. I should have pulled away when his hand brushed mine. I didn't. I should have stopped him when he leaned closer. I didn't. And when his lips met mine, slow, firm, no stage, no paparazzi, I didn't just kiss him back. I let go. Of Logan. Of Savannah. Of who I was before all of this began. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like truth. The next morning the illusion shattered. Not between us. But around us. Amelia's name lit up my phone at 7:16 a.m. It's out. I sat up in bed. Beckett stirred beside me. What is it? He asked, voice groggy. I didn't answer until I clicked the link Amelia sent. A grainy zoomed-in video. Me. And Logan. In his car. From 3 weeks ago. Before the exposé. I was leaning in, holding his face, saying something close. From the angle and the quality it looked intimate. Manipulated perfectly. The caption on the gossip site. Was it ever real? Tessa Hart caught in secret meeting with ex-fiancé weeks before ward marriage. Another angle showed me stepping out of the car and walking away. Alone. Clearly upset. But that wasn't what the world would see. Beckett read it over my shoulder. His face went cold. I turned to him. It's not what it looks like. He nodded slowly. Said nothing. Just got up and pulled on his shirt. The ride back to the city was silent. Not tense. Just quiet in a way that hurt. I wanted him to say it didn't matter. That he trusted me. That the kiss hadn't been a mistake. But he didn't speak. Not until we reached the penthouse. I have a meeting, he said flatly. I nodded. And then he was gone. By afternoon the headlines had spiraled. Tessa Hart's double life? Was the ward marriage a cover-up? Logan and Tessa. The secret that shattered Silicon Glam. Calls flooded my office. Shareholders demanded statements. Even Lace and Ledger, who had once painted me as a phoenix, now asked if I'd faked the flames. Amelia stood outside my door holding coffee and looking heartbroken. I can't find the original leaker, she said. But my money's on Savannah. She must have had a PI following Logan. I nodded. Of course. The final play. Character assassination. If she couldn't beat me in business, she'd beat me with doubt. Beckett didn't come home that night. Or the next. No calls. No texts. Just headlines. Just silence. By the third morning I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into his office at 8:05 a.m., past Charlotte and 2 interns who froze at the sight of me. Beckett was at his desk reading something. He didn't look up. I stood there anyway. I didn't cheat on you, I said quietly. Still no response. I didn't lie. He finally looked up. His eyes were tired. You went to him. I went to end it. It didn't look like that. I know. Silence. You don't trust me, I whispered. He rose slowly. Crossed to me. Stopped inches away. I want to, he said. God, Tessa, I want to. Then do. He stared at me. Then he exhaled. And reached for my hand. The morning after Beckett took my hand in silence, we sat together, shoulder to shoulder, in the penthouse war room. A digital wall pulsed with every major outlet's coverage. The false narrative was spreading fast. But so was the truth. Because Amelia had found the original file. Unedited. Uncropped. A clear shot of Savannah's private investigator handing off the manipulated footage to an anonymous gossip site editor. Logan was in the background. He wasn't surprised. He was watching. They orchestrated it, I said, voice hollow. Beckett's jaw flexed. And we're done playing nice, he replied. By noon, Hartria Incorporated released a full statement. A manipulated video has circulated with clear intent to damage reputations and mislead the public. The footage was obtained illegally, altered deceptively, and released by parties currently under federal review for inheritance fraud and perjury. We provided the uncut footage. The truth went live at 12:47 p.m. And the tide turned. Hard. By 3 p.m., Savannah's name was trending, for all the wrong reasons. Hashtag Savannah scheme. Hashtag fraud bride. Hashtag free Tessa. Screenshots of the tampered frames were compared to the originals by a dozen tech analysts. Everyone saw the lie. Logan's company issued a vague statement about miscommunications. His investors didn't buy it. Pierce MedTech stock dropped 22% before the bell. But the real blow came the next morning. When the feds showed up. Logan and Savannah were mid-toast at a staged brunch when two black SUVs rolled up outside their townhouse. Cameras swarmed. A reporter captured it live. "Mr. Pierce, do you have a comment? Are you being arrested? Savannah, did you forge your father's will?" They said nothing. But the cuffs said everything. I watched the footage alone. No champagne. No celebration. Just silence. When Beckett came in, I didn't look up. "They're done," I said. He walked to me, rested a hand on my shoulder. And said nothing. Because he knew it wasn't victory I felt. It was closure. And it burned. The media firestorm lasted days. Investigations piled up. Lawyers scrambled. But for once I was untouched. The woman they tried to paint as a liar, a cheat, a failure, was now the storm. Untouchable. Beckett and I took a drive upstate 2 days later. Not to escape, but to breathe. We stopped at a little cliffside overlook where the trees were just starting to turn gold. No phones. No staff. Just wind and space. "I didn't think I'd feel anything," I said, watching the horizon. "You do." "I feel lighter." Beckett slipped his fingers between mine. "They lost because they underestimated you," he said. "No," I corrected, turning to face him. "They lost because they taught me how to fight." That night back at the estate, Beckett poured 2 glasses of wine. We didn't talk about Savannah. Or Logan. Or the empire they'd destroyed with their own hands. We just sat by the fire, legs tangled, listening to the storm outside. And when he kissed me this time, it wasn't because the cameras demanded it. It wasn't part of a contract. It was because he wanted me. And I wanted him back. The next morning I packed away the last of my old life. A photo of me and Logan, shoved into a drawer. A ring I never wore, melted down and sent to a women's shelter as a donation. An old email thread labeled wedding planning, deleted. Then I stepped into a boardroom with Beckett at my side. The world had already crowned us the new power couple. But we didn't need the title. Because we had something they never had. Truth. A week passed. Then Logan and Savannah's names slowly vanished from the headlines. The charges against them didn't. Wire fraud. Forgery. Suction. They were out on bail, but their reputations weren't. Those were buried. And I hadn't said a single word since. I didn't need to. I'd already said everything worth saying, with silence, success, and survival. Beckett and I returned to the city quietly. No interviews. No press tours. Just work. Just him. We spent late nights rebuilding the Hartria launch calendar, plotting investor dinners, redesigning ad campaigns with actual joy this time. There were no more whispers about us being fake. No more questions about the ring on my finger. People saw the way he looked at me now. And the way I looked back. One morning I found a velvet box on the kitchen island. No note. Just the box. I opened it and laughed. It was empty. I turned, and Beckett was leaning against the doorway, barefoot, coffee in hand. "Funny," I said, lifting the box. "You forget something?" He walked over, took the box gently from my hands and set it down. "No," he said. "That one's a placeholder." "A placeholder for what?" "For the one I'm about to give you." My breath caught. He didn't kneel. He didn't make a speech. He just looked me in the eye and said, "If I asked you again, this time for real, would you say yes?" My eyes burned. I didn't cry. But something inside me finally exhaled. "You'll need to say it like you mean it." He smiled. And then he dropped to one knee. "I'm not asking for strategy," he said quietly. "Not for contracts or media attention. I'm not even asking for forever." He opened a second box. This one wasn't empty. A single ring. Rose gold. Simple. Honest. "I'm just asking for right now," he said. "You and me. As we are." Tears finally slipped free. I nodded. Then I whispered the word that had taken me so long to say. Yes. We didn't throw a grand wedding. No gowns. No photographers. No ice sculptures. We eloped in late autumn under a canopy of red leaves and thin sunlight. Charlotte and Amelia were our witnesses. Eli gave me away. Beckett's vows were short, but they didn't need to be long. Because he never looked away. Not once. And that meant more than any poem. A week later a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a simple card. I see now. I was never your match. Tell Beckett he was always the better man. Oh. I folded it without a word and slid it into a drawer. Not because I forgave Logan. But because I had finally let him go. Months passed. Hartria took off like wildfire. Beckett and I bought a cabin by the lake and only told 5 people. We still argued about coffee grounds and paint colors and how to split the closet space. But we always ended up in the same bed, arms tangled, hearts steady. It was never perfect. It was better. Because it was real. One evening I stood in our living room, wineglass in hand, Beckett in the kitchen swaying slightly to soft jazz. I watched him for a while. How easy he moved now. How relaxed. How unguarded. And I thought, this is what survival looks like. Not polished. Not planned. Just earned. Just lived. He looked over and caught me staring. What? He asked. Nothing, I said smiling. Just taking stock. Of what? Everything I almost lost. He crossed the room and kissed me like we had all the time in the world. And for once we did. The end.